And welcome to Cloaker's Education Foundation, providing quality content for amazing teachers and students. If this is your first time here, welcome, and if you've been following our channel, welcome back. This is our World History series, and this lesson is on Europe in turmoil, specifically looking at a lot of the events in the early 1500s Europe. So let's dive in. Now, one of the first big events that are in the text and a huge important event for Europe is the rise and fall of the Spanish Armada. Now, this is often referred to in pop culture sometimes. You can see here Spain has begun colonizing the New World, right? It's past 1492 or the early 1500s. And so Spain has colonies in the New World. They have lands all throughout Europe, and Philip II, the King of Spain, is dealing with an armed Protestant revolution in the Spanish Netherlands, or what we would call Holland nowadays. Now, the Dutch are ultimately going to win over the Spanish monarchy. Part of that is the fact that it's on the far side. They're dedicating a lot of their resources to the New World, and the Dutch are going to be supported by the English monarchy, one of the fellow Protestant kingdoms in Europe. Now, Philip II will see himself as the champion of Catholicism, the defender of the faith, and so in order to reinstate a Catholic monarchy, Mary the Queen of Scots to be specific, he is going to build up this massive fleet of ships known as the Spanish Armada. They're going to sail to England, invade, and install the Catholic Queen. Now, the Dutch winning over the Spanish is a huge upset, especially being supported by England. So the Spanish build their navy, the Armada, and launch it to sail up to England to invade and reinstall Mary Queen of Scots, or to install Mary Queen of Scots as a Catholic queen over the Isles. Unfortunately, the Spanish ships are going to encounter this huge, massive storm as they exit the Bay of Biscay into the English Channel, and then immediately come out of that storm and have to fight the English Navy, which has been sheltered in their ports. They didn't have any damage from these major storms, and so the Spanish ships are going to suffer huge casualties. Something like 80% of the Spanish ships are sunk there in the Bay of Biscay in the English Channel. And the survivors, instead of trying to turn around as they've worked their way up the coast, instead of trying to turn their way and fight back through the English Navy, they're going to choose to sail around England, Scotland, and Ireland and try and possibly land somewhere to begin a small invasion or return home. Unfortunately for the Spanish, of course, storms in the North Sea are very rough. They continue to lose ships. Many sailors are going to end up shipwrecked on Ireland. This is going to introduce a new genetic appearance, affectionately referred to as dirty Irish. This is when someone has black hair and blue eyes, was introduced by the Spanish sailors, of course, being shipwrecked and intermarrying with the Irish on the island. And many, or quite a few sailors will be able to return back to Spain from this expedition, which was ultimately a failure. Into a lot of the conflict going on in Europe, we will see there are a massive amount of civil wars and conflicts within Europe during this time. You can see based off this map the Habsburg states. These are predominantly the Spanish and Austrian monarchies. They are strongly Catholic. And of course, you have a large part of the anti-Habsburg alliance, or the Protestant states such as Sweden, Prussia, and France, who kind of teeters back and forth on being Catholic and Protestant, whether it's Henry of Navarre or the Medici, or whoever's, or Louis XIV and XIII. They're going to go back and forth, but predominantly they're going to be Catholic, with a few period of times being ruled by Huguenots or the French Protestants. Now, we go quite in depth into the ideas of France and some of the conflict in our Absolutism video, which you can check out in our channel. But most of the French nobility are Catholic. A little less than half are Calvinists or Protestants, known as Huguenots. Henry IV was a Huguenot who was going to lead a revolution and successfully take over the crown. And part of this will be ending in a peace deal where he marries the daughter of Catherine Medici and the King of France. He'll be Protestant and then ultimately convert to Catholicism. We talk about this in our Absolutism video if you want more details. But part of this compromise of trying to bring France together was the Edict of Nantes, which gave religious toleration, where people could practice their faith without fear of violence or persecution inside of France. Nations such as their neighbor, the Holy Roman Empire, are going to also struggle after the Protestant Reformation. It's a predominantly Catholic empire with a lot of Protestant or Calvinist nobles, especially in the southern parts of the empire. Many German city-states are going to declare war against the Holy Roman Empire over the fact that they are Calvinist and going to protest against the Catholic monarchy. And most of Europe during this 30-year chunk of time is going to be split between Catholics and Protestants. And with the exception of England, and even England during this time has own issues as they are predominantly Protestant or converting to Protestant. They'll have their own issues we'll talk about in a few moments. And of course the Irish who are holding on to the Catholic faith. Germany is going to be torn apart during these 30 years, affectionately known as the 30-Year War, where the Holy Roman Empire is going to break into over 300 small city-states based off of religious affiliation and, of course, local nobles and their rule. It is not without its drama, and this might take a few moments to explain. The Tudor line officially ends with Elizabeth I. She passes away without any children, and James I assumes the throne. Elizabeth was the one who defeated the Spanish monarchy and stopped the Spanish from taking over. James I assumes the throne, but of course, believing in the divine right to rule. He will be the one who establishes Jamestown in 1607 in the New World, begins English colonization, and his son Charles will eventually assume the throne. Now, it's important to note, during this time in England, there are two groups of people, the Pilgrims, or Separatists, and the Puritans. Now, for U.S. history, and especially for younger children, we often push these two together because they settled both in Massachusetts, but they are extremely different people. The Pilgrims wanted to completely separate from the Church of England. The Church of England, of course, split from the Catholic Church, and the Pilgrims, the Separatists, said we as a group did not go far enough away from the Catholic Church. The Anglican Church is beyond fixing. We need a whole new church, and they're going to establish, of course, their settlements in the Plymouth and the Mayflower. The Puritans, they're not separatists. They're still recognizes that the English Church, the Anglican Church, separated from the Catholic Church. They believed it can be fixed. It can be purified from its inconsistencies, and they'll establish their own colony in the Massachusetts Bay. And this, of course, is hugely important for U.S. history. But a group of the Puritans will do an armed revolution in England, led by Oliver Cromwell. They'll overthrow the monarchy and establish him as the dictator of England. And it's a brutal, brutal few years, especially for the Catholics in England. Ultimately, he'll be defeated, and Charles II, the son of Charles I, will be reinstalled. He is, of course, a Catholic sympathizer, although he is going to invite many of the Protestants back to England, those that left, and James II will be heir to the throne. And of course, we'll go a little bit more in depth here in a few moments. Nobles are going to invite the daughters of Charles II back to England. He's going to try and bring a lot of the old nobles back to England to try and bring England together. William of Orange, the husband of Mary, the oldest daughter, will accept the invitation. Of course, he comes back. King James is going to see this as a usurpation of the throne. He will stand down, flee to France, and William of Orange will claim the throne. Now, of course, this ties into a lot of the things that are going to develop on, and we'll have to have a separate video on this for the sake of time. William claims the throne, and the English Parliament is going to pass the English Bill of Rights limiting the rule of the monarchy after these brutal years of King James and Charles and the rule of Oliver Cromwell, and establishing a constitutional monarchy in England. Now, certain rights under the English Bill of Rights was that the citizens had the right to petition the king with grievances. The king could not levy taxes without permission of the Parliament. Freedom of speech was not to be suspended in Parliament. And of course, there would be limits on the king's authority in England. And we'll see the flip side of that coin in France. Now, we have a whole video on absolutism, specifically looking at France, Louis XIII, Cardinal Richelieu, Louis XIV, and his legacy. But they're going to be absolutely focused on total power of the monarchy, destroying the nobility so that no one can challenge the authority of the king. Prussia will also be practicing this with Frederick I, and Peter the Great in Europe will begin westernizing Russia to make it more like its Western powers. And of course, there is a series, I believe it's on Hulu, called Catherine the Great, which starts tying into this. It does downplay a lot of the Russian ideology that Peter and some of the previous rulers had, to kind of emphasize a comedic effect. So please don't necessarily view that as historically accurate. It's more for comedic value. But England has limited the monarchy. France is embracing absolutism, or forcefully embracing absolutism. Prussia or modern-day Germany, and Russia are going to be both trying to modernize and practice the policies and rules of absolutism. Culturally, during the speaking, we enter the Baroque era. Complex, bold forms, which are going to be widely popular. We see the writings and musical stylings of Johann Bach, George Handel, who are going to produce music still listened to even to this day. Writers like William Shakespeare are going to be producing works and plays, such as a lot will be performed at the Globe Theater, which has been reconstructed after the fire. You can see a picture of it. Absolute beautiful building on the top right-hand corner. And you can see the Baroque art there in the middle. The details, the complexities, the joke is to go broke on Baroque. You want to spend all your money on this. And of course, the literature aspects that are going to be created, the classical works of Macbeth, Othello, Hamlet, of course, all coming from Shakespeare, Volpone, Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes, going to be a classic written during this time. All of these have been viewed as classical literature for hundreds of years and probably will be for the next 100. Now that wraps up our lesson. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to check us out on Teachers Pay Teachers, YouTube, Rumble, and the Cloaker Education Foundation. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see something new and what's next in our series, go ahead and click here. For something you might like, click down here on the bottom. And to subscribe to our channel, click here on the right. All this and more is just a click away. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.